Hey, Cora.
Hey, hello there. I forgot I had one of those little sticky things that you put that swivel to hide your camera. It's like, why is my screen black?
That'll do it.
That'll do it. Oh, Gregory, it's nice to meet you. Hello. You
Hey
have a
there.
lovely office. And I'm curious how to say your name. Is it
I assume you're
Loriance?
talking to me. Yeah,
Yes. Is it Loriance?
yeah, it's Loriance. It's French, but most people can't pronounce it, so Loriance is okay. Or Lol. Yeah. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all, by the way.
So nice to
Oh,
meet you. I've been taking French classes with my husband for a few weeks. I've always wanted to for the longest time, and I figured now would be a good time to start learning. So it's been
Oh,
really,
that's
really
amazing.
fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. I can't speak French, by the way. Just
Oh,
putting my hand up there very quickly. Yeah, my background is I was born in South Africa, but my mum's Czechoslovakian, my dad's British, and my brother's American, so we're from over, really.
that's
that's awesome.
amazing. But somewhere along the way, someone had an appreciation of French culture and French names.
Yeah, it actually comes from a gardening book, my name. Um,
Really? That is so cool. Are you named
yeah,
after like
French
a
gardening book.
flower or a plant?
I'm not actually sure of the whole story, but I know that my dad was reading a gardening book when he was flying over to the Philippines and he saw the name and that's how I came to be. So it's a
That's
bit of an interesting one. Yeah.
That's way more lovely than my name, which happens to come from my dad's favorite newscaster that he had a crush on at the time. That, that I came to
Or is a
be.
really nice name though. I don't hear it quite often, so I think that's awesome. It's really
Yeah,
nice. Yeah.
thank you. Looks like we've got Robert and Nathaniel in as well, and then James and his cool NASA sweater. Hey, and then I see Lou. Welcome, y'all. And I think let me go over to the participants list because we might have some folks that
I've been
are
letting them
not
in as
showing
they go.
video.
Oh,
Let's see.
yeah, there are.
How can I tell? All right. So if they have it off. Okay. So yes, Charlotta, welcome again. It's nice to see you. Charlotta came to the Welcome to Builder session a few weeks back and she asked a lot of great questions. So I will be curious to see if you have any more for us today. And Alex Karpinski. Hi, Charlotte. Alex. Alex is one of our earliest users that we let in last year, like the very first, one of the very first groups that we did. And he has worked so hard. And this is like, I don't know, several iterations before what y'all are just seeing now. And he just like worked super hard to learn it when literally we had like no learning resources, no videos, no anything, and helped us so much like with feedback and improving the tool. So I'm very, very appreciative. It's good to see you, Alex. And Alex also just became a dad for the first time.
That's what I was
Congratulations.
going to say. Congrats, Alex.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thanks
That's
so
awesome.
much. Super exciting time. So,
It's
yeah,
good to
thanks a lot.
see
And yeah, likewise. Good to see everyone and glad to see Builder Hours back up and running. So,
you.
pumped to
Yeah.
be here.
Let's see who else has joined. Felicia. Felicia is amazing. It looks like she's muted right now. She's actually part of our team. She's in Romania and she's the most detailed uh, tester. Like she's got a lot of experience doing other stuff before, but she helps us find tons of bugs and just has like the most wonderful eye for detail. So hi Felicia, welcome. And let's see. So Kyoko, hello, welcome to you. And then we've got Lars, Luke, hi Luke, Nick, and then Peter is in here. Peter has added some I guess he created support tickets so you guys won't see it, but he's kind of working on some APIs. So I guess I could kind of explain a little bit about what we'll be doing in Builder Hours. So this time is really just going to be for our team. Right now it's me, Mark, Drew Thomas, and Dorian. So it's really going to be a time for us to help you guys with your builds and just to chat and get to know each other. So if there's ever any questions that you have, or like you're working on something and you're not quite sure, you hit a roadblock, come join us on here, and then we can like do that in person. And then it looks like Lars says he's got to leave in a bit. He's got friends coming over. Yes, I will also record this and then upload it. It's Friday. I know it's like Friday night for some of y'all, so we'll speed it along. Okay, yes, I'll record this and then upload it to the community. And then we'll also just kind of do like little tutorials or demos or show you guys how to do some cool stuff. All right, and then let's see, we've got Depan, and then it looks like Tim in the call. Alrighty, so I guess we can get started. So my name is Cora, and I run Builder support and jack of all trades, do some other things like tutorials and whatnot. And yeah, I think it would be really fun to get to know some of y'all on the call. And so whether you're building or not, I'm sure y'all have a bunch of ideas for apps or things that you are going to be working on soon, or you might be like plotting out. So I would love to hear some more of that. So if anyone is down to share maybe something they're thinking about working on or planning, I would love to hear.
Well, I just got access recently, but I don't know if we remember before the pandemic hit, I actually met Mark. I think Cora may have been there at the Microsoft office in New York City for the No Code event back in January 2020, and I've been waiting to get access since. So I'm super excited I just got this access. So I'm just getting started building. I played around for like 30 minutes last week, but I'm just really excited to be here and learn from all of you and start getting, hands on the tool.
Awesome, Nathaniel. Is there anything in mind, or are you just kind of like exploring?
No, I mean, I'm here for all of it. The basics, watching what others are doing, meeting people in the community. Nothing super specific at the moment.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Nathaniel. And Lou just asked a question besides me and Mark. Who else is here from the Builder team? So I'll let you guys.
I just wasn't sure. I heard you say about 4 names in a row, and I just wasn't looking up at that point. I tend to take a lot of notes just to process thought. I don't know why that's my pattern, but well, cool. Great to meet everyone, whether you're officially with Builder or building.
Good to meet you. Nice.
So Lou, you know what I'm going to ask next is talk to us. What are you working on? Do you have any ideas
you know what? I do not have anything that I started. I know I signed up a while ago, and I just wanted to sit in and see what people are building and or see what kind of resources you have. I officially am a UX designer, so I don't necessarily code. And I work for a company that does cybersecurity stuff, but I also like to think entrepreneurially and put things together, see what I could quickly prototype. And I think that's what Bildr can do for me, right? How crazy in depth do I need to know code and or how things typically come together code-wise to make something magical happen?
Yeah. Corey, you want me to jump in?
Yeah, who wants to answer?
You were Drew.
Cool. Yeah, I'll jump in there. So Bildr intentionally is sort of like a layer on top of web technologies. So we really try hard not to obfuscate much. So the more code-ish things you know, the faster you're going to pick things up, right? But you don't actually have to write any code to use Bildr. It's just that because we're sitting on top of those systems and we really don't try to hide too much, that the more you know, the better you are. So for instance, like I'm not a coder at all. I don't write any code. Dorian, who's on the call, is not a coder, doesn't write any code. Drew is a software developer. He's by trade, JavaScript developer, front-end developer, and actually all full stack developer, really. And so we all use Bildr to build Bildr. And Dorian in particular has, I don't know, we're 200-300 systems over 12 years. I'm about the same pace with Bildr, a couple hundred systems over that time period, previous versions of Bildr, obviously. We had Bildr as a tool, internal tool for building custom software for clients that whole time. So Bildr is really version 6 of what we were using internally to solve problems for clients. And we're not coders, but we have a really detailed understanding of systems, right? So systems and process understanding is big. And then in terms of design, Bildr is much more like Webflow than other no-code tools. So like Card, for instance, something like that, you're not going to have much similarity there to Card, where they're trying to make it as easy as possible to design for you. Bildr is more about flexibility than about making it as quick as possible, right? So when you start in Bildr, if you know CSS, that's going to help a ton. You understand the principles of CSS. You don't necessarily have to know all of the, like names of all the properties or anything. That would help too. But understanding like in general, how a website works, the box model, that stuff, that's going to help a ton. In terms of actual code, you don't really need to know how to code. If you do, though, you have a lot of power because you can actually write JavaScript, you can write CSS directly. You can do server-side functions if you know how to do node functions. So really, you can do anything you want.
Cool. Well, my goal this year is to unicorn myself out, and try and learn code, but also try and learn nimble ways for me to prototype faster than I can do things in Photoshop, Acture, and all that kind of slow stuff. We have some developers that are they're like hot shots, and they'll come up with something, and I'm like, I have ideas that I want to get done, but they're doing it so fast, and because there's all these frameworks, it doesn't look half bad. But I want to make that stuff too, and I want to have it working, I don't want to have to explain. So when you click on that, it's,
Exactly.
So yeah. So cool.
That was our huge selling point for customers for years, was basically, look, you work directly with the person who understands your business. So like Dorian would work directly with a person, and then we got smart and we put project management in between. So that you didn't have the customer asking the person building for the thing. But in the beginning, it really was like me and Dorian would just go like work directly with the customer, and we would build in real time in the meeting, just make the changes in real time, and it's immediate. We'd click publish and they're using the thing we were changing live.
So how long have the four of you been building?
Let's see. So I started the company with my dad, who's actually on the call. That's Tim M, and a business partner. Cool. In 2006, we started our consulting firm. And then Dorian joined 12 years ago this month, I think. Cora joined 10 years ago now.
Wow.
Drew's the newbie. He joined like
I think it's 1 year, maybe.
About a year.
Not full time 1 year, but 1 year since I started.
Yeah, but that's cool. Everyone's like 10 years. That that says a lot.
Felicia's been working with my dad and my business partner longer than I have.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she started before me. But we've been together a really long time doing custom work for customers using the tool. And then last year we spun it out into its own company. So Bildr is a separate entity now from our consulting practice.
Cool. And so you have both.
We have both of them. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same team doing both sides of it, but we split it's a very separate, consulting practice versus SaaS product are very different operations. And so,
but that sounds like the right way to do it. I was at a company where they decided to go all hands into something that was like a product of what they were doing. And it, because they put too many things into it, it was basically kind of like Dropbox. But it ended up like they started to put things into it that didn't make sense. Like we want to make a social page out of it, like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyhow, it sounds like you guys did the right thing and like kind of pivot and separate, but keep the main thing going, right? Yeah, that's smart. I like that.
Well, we have a lot of customers over there to support too. We've got hundreds of clients that need to continue to have support. So we'll have that forever probably.
I do want to just note that when like creating this latest version of Builder, I think we tried to take all the pain points from actually like having clients and when you're building things and try to solve for some of those things that were kind of either mistakes that we made or lessons that we learned, like actually having a company and building products for other people that were real. So a lot of that I think has gone into and informed what we've done in Builder. I would actually like to hear, because it kind of, Lou brought up this point. He's working on some stuff. He's got ideas. He wants to be able to do it on his own, but he also works with developers. So I think Builder caters for a lot of different setups. Like either you want to go in there and learn how to do it yourself, or you also want to work with other people. And I don't think we talk a lot about like I want to talk more about the design and development relationship in Builder and how like you can put those two together. Those two groups can work together. So either Mark or Drew or Dorian, can y'all talk a little bit about how if you are either like a product manager or a designer and you have a development team, like how does that come together in Builder?
Drew, you want to have a go at that one?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a broad question, but basically the things you do to build a website or a web app, it's all done in Builder from start to finish. So you can have that whole process. So there's a lot of things that kind of mirror a traditional process, and then there's a lot of things that are just so much easier. But one of the things, like just to give like a kind of a broad example, is if I come in without knowing code and I'm dragging and dropping and building in Builder, and then I need, say I make a whole layout, and then I'm like, ooh, but I really want this to do this. And that requires this Node.js library, that requires JavaScript that's custom. I can have a developer come in and get kind of like a sectioned off contained JavaScript box that they just type what they need. And it's not gonna like, they don't have to worry about how the rest of the site's set up. They don't have to worry about the frameworks. They just do the little thing I need. And that gets packaged up into like a Builder action. You know, so now that they wrote that one little snippet, or that could be a big snippet, now it's a Builder action that as a no-coder, again, I can just keep using. And not only that, but like I have it now. Like you can transfer these things from project to project, from person to person. So like it's there forever. And so I guess like that's just to say like there's a new paradigm a little bit where everyone can come into Builder as this central spot and work. And if you're really into CSS and you're using like cutting edge CSS that's like not even accepted in all browsers, you can still write that in Builder. Like you can go in and, you know, you don't have to just select and drag and drop. So it's the same thing where if I don't know CSS, I'm like, oh, I want to set a background color. I find background color, I set it. But if someone on my team really is good at CSS, they can just click over to that CSS. They can just be typing straight CSS code and they can write whatever they want. You know what I mean? Okay. So it's kind of this a new paradigm a little bit, I'd say. I mean, I don't know, Mark, you might have a more concise answer, but that's kind of how I see it. I was coming from an agency world also. I previously had my own agency. So I took all that. I'm seeing Builder like ding, 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 ding. Like this is what we need, you know?
Yeah, I'd only throw one other thing in there. So like Dorian and I being non-coders, having to deliver for clients, but we have a team of coders that back us up, you know? And so when I just like what Drew described, my process looks like this. And this is still what we do all the time because we're building Builder with Builder. So me and Dorian and Drew are in there using the tool. And when we hit an action type that we don't have, or we have an element type that we don't have, Drew will just go write his own JavaScript and do that. But I don't know how to do that. So I'm either going to Drew and saying, hey, I need an action type for this. Or I go to one of my teammates like Darrell or something and say, hey, can you make me this thing? And what's cool about it is I can actually go set up what we call an action type myself, where I can say it's going to take these two arguments and I'm expecting this to be the output. So I just set that up, and then all they do, they go write the JavaScript that connects all that. And so once they put the function in there and they say, okay, it's ready to go, I'm actually just using this action with these two arguments. That's all I'm thinking about. That process is amazing for teams, but it extends out. It's sort of like, think of Builder as like only plugins. The core actions and elements that are in Builder we consider those plugins. So like the base toolkit that you get in your project, is something that you can go in and modify the JavaScript. You can change it. And when we push updates out to that toolkit, we let you accept those updates into your project or not.
Okay.
Because once you get something into production, we don't want to break it. We don't want to cause any issue to anything like that. We need you to be in control of that. So these are things like that. That's what Cora was talking about, where we come from this place of we're used to delivering high value, high dollar projects for real clients in production and keeping them there for years. And so we have to be really cautious about that. And we want to bring that process to you all.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing I would add is like if you're working for an agency and you want to share where like I'm a non-technical person. But like if we're working on something and I just want to see like, hey, what if I can change the color of this button or like change the text? I can go in there and do it. And I don't have to know anything super complicated. So you can allow, and like eventually we'd really like to release like a team version with like permissions, so that if you have like a stakeholder or you have like a product manager who isn't actually active in the building, they might be able to go in there and make some tweaks and like see those updates without having to go through the whole process of like submitting a request to change this and change that. So that'll be really fun when we get to do that. But I think that'll also be kind of like a great selling point for people who are building things for other people, to be like, hey, yeah, when I'm ready, I can let you in and like you can come in and like make small edits if you like to like the design of it, and you know, just work a little bit more closely in a collaborative fashion.
That's really interesting. So then it's quite similar to the way that you can have those different kind of permissions with Webflow, where you'll have like the client view where they can come in and change like small bits of content, etc. And then you have obviously the developer view. One of my questions is, how does it work with other no-code platforms and tools? So for instance, I come from an Airtable background and Webflow, and I just want to understand how that could integrate together and, you know, like what the process is there, etc. Because most of my projects that I'm working on at the moment are just building CRMs and databases, etc. And I'm looking more into building apps and using automation like Integromat and so forth. So how does that all kind of relate?
Drew's probably got the best answer.
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit, because I did. So I run No Code List, which is, it runs off of Airtable and it's built in Bildr.
Awesome.
And so the way it works is basically there's an API action. So it kind of goes back to what Mark was saying about everything's a plugin, basically. There's an API action where you can do any API you want. So you can, if you know APIs and you know code, you know, set everything up, and it works with literally anything. Like I've never run into an API I couldn't use with that. But for Airtable, what I did was I took that and I did the other thing Mark was saying. I made my own action. I said, these are the inputs, like Airtable secret, Airtable base, you know, the fields you want, whatever. I made that. Behind the scenes, I wrote all the stuff to connect to Airtable. I made it a little advanced to where it handles Airtable's querying limits. So, you know, 100 records at a time, it'll keep going. Did a bunch of stuff, and then packaged it up into an action. And so now it's one single Airtable action, and I made it available for everyone in Bildr. So you can, anyone right now can import the Airtable pattern and just hook up, import Airtable data.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's really cool in that way. And then the other cool side of it is once you pull that data in, you can work with it as if it's like regular Bildr data. So if you wanted to go really extreme, you could actually just instantly save it to a Bildr data collection. So it's kind of like a sync to Airtable. But the way I use it, I query Airtable every time someone comes to No Code List. And I do like filtering on the data where I'm hiding and showing, and there's searching, and then you click on a card and you get a full page. That's all done in Bildr because it's treating the Airtable data just like it was Bildr data. It does everything else, you know, that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really good. That's amazing. Yeah, that would help me a lot with projects going forwards. How interesting. Amazing.
I mean, I've loved it because I previously had No Code List with, it was kind of custom. It was in Ghost, but I was using Airtable as custom. There was so much extra that I had to do to get what I wanted. There's just so
much layering to it, isn't it? It just gets too much.
Yeah, and I just got rid of it all in Bildr. It's just straight up, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's really awesome.
Bildr also has data collections built in itself. So you do have the option either to have it external and just integrate, or just do it in the one environment
and mix and match.
And both.
Like
Yeah.
with
That's what I was
Airtable,
gonna
the
say.
list is Airtable, but everything else, like the users, the upvotes, the comments, that's all Bildr native data, and they're seamlessly integrate.
Really
That's
awesome.
I think
Yeah,
that'll
let's
be the
talk
most
about
common
integrations
method.
a little bit,
Yeah.
because I know people are going to be curious about that. So Drew kind of mentioned one method is like, if it's not there, you can go create it manually yourself, right? But then also, if it's something that's really commonly used, like we ended up creating a Stripe integration pattern as well, because a lot of people want to use that. So if we end up creating something, we will always make a pattern out of it and share it with y'all, so that you can just bring it in. So if there are any integrations that you guys are really using or that are really important, do like let us know, like a feature request. Or if you end up building something and you want to share it and it's really cool, like let us know and we can take a look, mark it as a created pattern, and then other people can bring it to use in their projects as well. So that's kind of part, as far as feature requests go. If you guys do see things like that in there, just call it out to us. Like I keep a list of that stuff. If it's something we can do a quick turnaround on, we'll definitely try. And then of course, if it's like something that's super important, we'll definitely add it onto the roadmap. Yeah, but with a lot of stuff like that, if it ends up being something that would also be helpful to us, like anything that we do that's cool, we like to turn it around and kind of allow y'all to use it as well. And then Lars is asking how to make a feature request. You can literally just either create a support ticket from the community or just make a post and be like, hey, does anyone know how to do this thing, or does this exist? And then we can figure it out for y'all and let you know.
Yeah, I would love it in the regular community. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nate.
No, sorry, that's all right. I use Airtable a lot too, so that was a great question, and loved the response. Other than, well, Drew, I'd love to hear kind of like why you mixed and matched with Airtable versus the data collection within Bildr. I mean, from my perspective, like I do some work with a nonprofit, and I built out a lot of quick functionality in Airtable, and so like if now I'm introducing Bildr, it makes sense to kind of transition an existing data collection into Bildr. But I'd love to kind of hear pros and cons, or your thoughts on like just using the data collection within Bildr versus using something like Airtable.
Yeah, well, in my case, I only used Airtable because it already existed. So I had it running in Airtable, and it was like 300 some tools and like 100 agencies or whatever. There's like a couple different lists that work, and I was like, I don't want to bring this in. I thought really hard about it because I could have created something to do a one-time sync and pulled all that into Bildr and started using Bildr. That actually, it's not too hard to do that. So I thought a lot about it, and I was, there's people submit. So I'm using like an embedded Airtable form. There's all these extra things I had going. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep it in Airtable. So if I started over, I might not build that in Airtable. I might do that in Bildr data. But I could see other things where if there's any reason for it to be in Airtable data, like maybe like the client, maybe I'm working for a client and they're really familiar with spreadsheets in Airtable and they just want it in Airtable, like that might be a reason. But otherwise, I think I'd probably just do Bildr data. And then the one kind of current limitation or caveat to that is that the actual data collections in Bildr are like wide open. So if you want to build an admin, you have to build it basically. Like, so if I want to make no-code list and I want to be able to edit my entries, I'd have to build a little thing. It only takes a second. I mean, I do it all the time. And it's kind of nice because it's exactly what I want every time. But you do have to kind of build some stuff out and build some tooling. And so in the future, you won't. In the future, that'll all be in Bildr and built in. But that is one small caveat right now. So for me to edit the Airtable list, I don't have to build a little interface. I can just go into Airtable. That's the main reason.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd throw in there too that, I mean, we're big proponents in do what works, right? So like if you've already got Airtable running, I wouldn't even, unless there's a real data reason, like if there's limits, Bildr's backend data will handle millions of records. I actually just did a test last week where I was like, I wonder how many, I'm just going to keep adding records until I get timeouts, like I'm just going to keep going. I was adding, I think I did 1,000 at a time. I just made a little button that would just like add 1,000 records at a time and just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And I was trying to actually render 1 million records in the page. That was what I wanted to get to. I didn't get to 1 million. I think we have an issue in our display there. I only got to like 350,000 displayed. So I want to see if I can get it to 1 million. So if you've got like big data needs where you need to actually use 1 million records or use 100,000 records in the view, that would be something where I would say probably do that in Bildr. But if other than that, even if you're doing something for like your nonprofit friends where you're going to make something for them, you could do it in phases too. Bring in the data from Airtable at first. It gets you up and running quickly. And then phase 2, you've got development, test, and production environments in your Bildr project too. So get that to production quickly. You now got a nice thing going for them, and then work on the dev environment for another month or something, building up a full-fledged backend and adding everything in that you want, and then do a release with that later. That's kind of how we managed clients over the years, right? We would do this step 1, step 2, step 3, get you to your final result.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for the good question, Nate. It looks like Nick asked a question in the chat about if you can import custom libraries.
Sure can.
Yeah,
Mark, do you want to answer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can. There's actually a in Bildr in the studio. I'll show my screen real quick. You can just see it. Let's see. So in the studio, if you go up to menu and then go to the dev library over here on the left, you have action types, functions, and libraries, and you have element types, functions, and libraries. And the libraries is where you're going to upload a static JavaScript library. That's one way to do it. What that'll do is it actually creates effectively something that's going to show up in the head and pull the file into the page before anything tries to render. So you'll have your whatever it is there that you're using, and then that will integrate with the functions. Another way to do it is in the function directly. There's actually a core JavaScript library built into Bildr called the BOPI. It's B API, like Bildr API. And Drew could, probably not in this call, but in another call with more detail, walk you through how you can actually use that to, in real time, pull in any referenced library. So that way you only get it when you need it rather than pulling it on every page. And then the third way is actually in whenever you make a function, you can do a server-side function. So I'll just type like test here and create the function. And when you go to the JavaScript, you have to create some things here, but I wanted to show, I don't have any secrets. But what you do is you can add a package. And when you add the package, you're actually searching for a node. Like I'll type Stripe and hit search here. So this goes out and searches for node packages. So this pulls in any node library that exists. So literally anything you want to bring in, you can bring in here. And this is a serverless Azure function. And you can reference it and do whatever you want with it. And it's really awesome because it automatically is handled in your different environments. So when you're in Bildr, you're working in your development environment. So your live view is whatever you're viewing of your development environment. You publish a test and it automatically spins up another serverless function, generates the keys, handles all that. When you go to production, it does it again. So you have a true dev test production environment, even for those backend libraries. So you can pretty much do whatever you want in there. It's all JavaScript though. We don't handle any other server-side languages yet. We will at some point. Azure Functions allows us to do it, but we just haven't built a UI around all those different things.
Cool. Nick, I hope that answered your question. Does anyone else have any other questions that are popping up?
Yeah, I was in, my use case is very specific. And so I generate, I do business appraisals, and I built an app in Bubble that will, in real time, perform the appraisal and generate a report. And by doing that, previously, I've been doing this for 20 years, and previously I had massive Excel spreadsheets and built it in, before that, built it with Excel and Word, and then built it just in Excel and had it do all that. And it was just very cumbersome. And of course, you couldn't have anyone else use it, basically. And I built it, a prototype in Bubble. It works, and it works for me. I use it in my practice. But it's pretty janky, and I would say that it is not something that I could, in the long term, put out as software as a service. My long-term goal is to have train other people to do this and use the software online, and have certifications and all that sort of thing. So this is what I'm interested in Bildr. I haven't really even taken the first step, because I don't want to go through things just to find out that we can't do this. And Mark's familiar with this, because I've asked him about this, to do a PDF. How do we just generate a simple 8.5 by 11 PDF? Because that's one of the biggest hurdles. It seems to be something that's not that easy to do. I've got it working in Bubble, but it's not ideal. I've had to make a lot of compromises, and I was hoping that I could do it at scale in Bildr without the compromises. So that's kind of where I am with that. So I'm anxious to hear if it's possible, how hard it is to do it, and can we get beyond sort of the simple, one page, that would be typical for use cases like an invoice or something like that. Can we get to the point where we can do multiple pages and do it at scale, and do it in a dynamic function, so that one report would be 20 pages, but another report based on different criteria and variables might be 30 pages.
Yeah. So 100% doable. Custom code will be required, and depending on what you're trying to do with that data, or what for the PDF, you'll either you'll have to have something server side or something front end, right? So you actually had written I think it was in the community, right? You and I have been going back and forth. So we've just about got the basic one ready to go. And just for some context, the first time we did a PDF server side print in like a big way was 2009 for a litigation support company who was handling the first $1 billion lawsuit from the government to the big banks over the financial crisis. They were handling, it was all the mortgage documents. So you're talking like, 800 pages of PDFs with inline images, doing things like take those PDFs, parse them, OCR them so that they're searchable and indexable, then add Bates numbers, which are the legal document numbers, to them. I mean, like really complicated stuff. So this was, 12 years ago we were doing that. So I have no doubt whatever you're trying to do can be done. And then beyond that, in our typical commercial business that we were doing over in the consulting practice, Dorian in particular has tons of experience doing this for customers, where they'll have, it might be an invoice, but it's a complicated invoice. Like maybe the invoice they're producing has 3 additional pages of like custom sized images and things like that all need to get packaged up into a single PDF with a signature spot. And it can't just be an image. It needs to be like highlightable text. It needs to be a real PDF, not just like a flat JPEG that says .pdf on the end, right? So all of those things, 100% certainty you can do them. But depending on the use case, we'll need to use different tools to get you there, right? So the easiest thing is obviously like, here's an image, right? Here's an image of the thing. But even that gets complicated, because whenever you're doing that, you run into stuff like, you can't have an image inside of your page that you're trying to turn into a PDF that is referenced from another website, for instance. It's called cross-domain, and it won't let you render that way. So you have to like convert that into a certain base 64 and like do all this magic to make just that simple thing happen of getting an image inside of there if you have an image on your page and you're trying to put it in a PDF. So there's 100 variables. I mean, we could literally talk about PDF for like days and days and days. I'm not kidding. We've probably spent 1,000 or more hours on our PDF actions in our previous versions of Bildr. So I've no doubt it can be done. But if I'm happy to get specific with you on another call of like, what exactly is the output you're trying to produce? Because like what my dev is doing right now, this, by the way, everyone, is a great example of put it in the community what you're looking for. Because if we've done this before and it's something that we think can impact everyone, we'll go start on an action type. So I actually have one of our developers building out this action type for PDF right now, specifically because of that community post. And we're almost ready with testing it, getting it out for you to test. But it might change now that I know a little more about the details. So it might be good to like, let me know what your final solution looks like, you know, so that we can say, okay, well, that'll work for this like interim piece, but really we need to go to this server side piece, which depending on what library you use there, it might actually cost you money. Like we might have to pay for a license to something that does that really complicated stuff. So it just depends on what you're looking for. But I'm happy to help you get there. Like that's what we're here for. Honestly, that's why we want to do these Bildr hours, is specifically for this. Bildr is a facilitator in terms of a stack. It's an open-ended platform. You can really do anything you want in there. It's as unlimited as code is for the most part. Like if you can build it into a web app, you can do it with Bildr. There may be some level of custom code we have to implement into an action type like what Drew was talking about before in order to make it get there, but you can definitely do it. So in terms of PDF, I'm actually happy to have a good long discussion with you on it and go into detail on like, what is this output? So the thing for us to understand is when the output is being produced, is it from one record or multiple records? Is it from what's listed on the page plus stuff that's somewhere else, or is it only on the page? Like there's a lot of variables there that determine how we would go about producing that. And then when we finish it, that'll be another pattern that shows up that now the next time somebody asks for that, we just point them to the pattern, right? So we're very incentivized to do this stuff. And it might take us some time. Like we can't guarantee timelines on it, right? But we're happy to try to do it for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Awesome. That's a great idea, Robert. I could definitely see creating that and then selling it to other people doing appraisals. So that sounds like a really great business. So it is 11:42. So I figured let's go ahead and jump in so Drew can show us how to bring in the authentication flow pattern, and then we can just hang around and answer some more questions. So Drew, are you down to share your screen?
Yep.
All right.
Should be able to see it, and then I'm going to try to make it a little smaller because my screen's huge. Is that like a decent size for people? I really can't tell.
Yeah, I've got a small laptop and I can see it pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
that's good on my side as well.
Solid. So I'll do this demo, which is just how to do a user authentication, but really it's going to show like a number of other things. And then I saw someone ask a question about switching between Canvas view and code view. So I can probably address that too, because you can't just switch to like all code. You can't just see the code of the whole thing, but you can get code view in just about everything you need to get code view in. So what I have here is a blank canvas, just like a new project. Usually when you first start, this box is popped up by default because there's nothing on the page, but that's all I've got. And so if I were to start an app, whatever it is, I might drag a page on. And for now, I'm just going to like say this is a home page. I'm just going to like put text on it, but this would be your app, say. And then you'd want to add some user auth. So I'll do that next. So like, yeah, I'm just going to keep this simple. So it's like, imagine this is my app, and now I'm like, okay, I want to let users in. So you can build all this by default. Like in Bildr, you have all the actions for signing users up. You have the actions for sending a magic link so they can sign into their email. You have actions for resetting password through email. That's all built in. And then all the stuff as far as the inputs and, good UI things like pressing enter to submit or validating an email address, all that stuff is in Bildr. You could build it every project. But instead of building it every project, I took some time and built one detailed version of that. And I called it user auth pattern. And now it's a pattern everyone can get to. So in the same way that I originally added a blank page and then I added a text box element, I can actually switch on the top between elements, blocks, and patterns. And so blocks I'm not really going to talk about, but that's basically kind of like a collection of elements into something custom. It's cool to know about. I'm just not going to touch it today. Today I'm going to do patterns. So for now, we have a few featured patterns, and these are things that we've made. that list in here. And in the future, this will be a lot more robust and probably include user-generated stuff. I mean, I'm not totally even sure yet, but you can see like the Airtable pattern I was talking about is in here. There's something in here for formatting dates. There's a mailer late subscribe. So it's just a bunch of stuff. And these are coming as we think of them, and as people request things, we build them and we put them in here if they're universal. So in this case, I'm going right to this user authentication pattern. So I'm just going to import it. What this is going to do is create a separate workspace in my canvas so that it's kind of separate of my app, but it's all connected to my app. And so it's asking me for the workspace name. I'm just going to leave it default. And then I don't need to bring in any data, but I could bring a data structure in if the pattern, relied on data structure. In this case, users are a built-in thing in Bildr. This is only using users, so I didn't need to bring in data, but it wouldn't matter if I did. So I just wait a second for this to import. And now it's going to take me to this new workspace. And so you can see these pages are loading in here. And there's a ton of pages around signing in and signing up. And there's also on this left side here, instructions, basically a little video where I explain how to do this stuff, and then instructions. And so if you're doing this yourself, you might want to watch that because you can learn how to do it more, basically. But what I'm going to do right now is the quick way. And so I have like there's these pages on the right side here: sign up, sign in, magic link, sign in, forgot password. There's some verifying pages. These are all sitting over here because I use them. But really, everything is wrapped up right here in this user auth demo sign in, sign up. And so what this will do, so let's see the best way to do this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. There's a million ways to do everything in Bildr. That's why I hesitate to think about it. I'm going to move this page into my main workspace like this. So sometimes I duplicate it first and then move it. But in this case, I'm just going to move this into workspace 1. And then go to workspace 1. And then zoom in. Looks like I placed it somewhere a little crazy.
I think it moved up to the top left. Yeah.
Top left.
Or one of them.
Or my original one maybe was top left.
I think you drag and drop the original one in the top left. Yeah.
Got it. It doesn't really matter that much. This is like total organization, but I'll just move this down quick.
1% zoom. Nice.
I don't even know the other page went. It's zooming like crazy. I moved it way too far.
That's that 1% and then drag.
It's like stuck. This is an embarrassing demo moment, I think. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it back to where it was. Just do it from there. Normally, when you do that, like I don't know why, I don't know how that page got in this position. Normally, everything's in the center and it'll just appear next to your other page. But I'm just going to imagine that this is the page because the workspaces, they interact with each other. So it doesn't actually matter what workspace it's in. What I'm trying to do, what I need to do, is give this page like a URL route so that I can go to it in a browser. And so one way you can do it, there's a full setting for URL routes where you can add them individually. But if you don't have any set, you can start in this live view. Actually, no, I'm going to do it through this way. So that's not my home page. I'll show you the live view in a second. So I'm going to create a new route. I'll call it sign in. And then I just select the page. So this page is called demo home. And again, like you could change this. Like I'm kind of going fast, so I'm not necessarily changing this name, but I would have moved this into my real project and then I would have called it sign in. It doesn't need to be called demo home. But once I create that, now /sign in is going to work. So if I go to my live view up here, oh, come on. Well, it's going to ask me to create a home page. So I'll do that. And then I'll type /sign in. It's so weird because I've done this a million times and I've never run into that where it's already signed in.
I think it's because you picked the wrong page. In the route.
Yeah, Drew, this one's called user auth demo sign in /up.
Good call. So I'll just change this. Yeah, you're right.
I almost said something. I noticed it and I was like, huh, is that right?
So embarrassing. All right.
There you go.
There we go. The way that this works is like this encompasses everything you need for signing in and signing up. So right now it kind of like started on sign in, but I can switch to sign up. I can sign up without a password. I can sign in with a magic link. If I'm signing in with a password, I can reset it if I forgot it. So that's all built in. And then same with other stuff like showing a password and hiding. And like typing here, you press enter, it goes into the password, press enter on the password, it submits. All that stuff's taken care of in this box. And so what I do for my projects is I just use this. Like I can go right now to sign up. And like, this is a real user now signed up. Well, maybe not. I don't know what's happening. But normally I do that, signs up, and that's a real user. And I'm done. You know, next time I come back, I go to sign in and I sign in. What I was going to show though is that that's the fast way to do it. But what you most likely will want to do is you'll come in here and kind of customize this. And that's where the real power comes in. So I don't have to build all that functionality, but I can make it match my app exactly. So for example, if I didn't want to have some of these, if I didn't want magic link sign in, I could skip that. I could come into here and say I'm on this sign. Let me zoom in so you can see. Say I'm on like this sign in page, but I don't want magic link. I can just delete that, or I can change the link of it, right? You know, I can change things like that. If I have this green button that's a little styled, I can come into styling and I can remove the class. And actually, sometimes you might have your own button class that you already made for your project. I can set that, and then I don't have it because I don't have it in my project. It would set that styled like my project, that kind of thing. So you can change any of that. And then so like on this sign in, what it's going to do, I can just trace this through. So if I go to the sign in button, I go to the events, there's a sign in with password that's set to the click of this button. So if I look at that action, I have all these actions here. You can see there's a bunch of them. This is just for this page. But I was using sign in with password. So the first thing I do is I disable the sign in button where I'm just selecting that. Then I set the value of it to say signing in while it's actually signing in. But then here, this user sign in with password is a built-in Bildr action. And so I'm setting where to get the email from, which is current page, this input. So I just select from my elements here. Password, current page, this password input. But then I set actions for what happens. So when someone successfully signs in, right now it's running sign in with password success, which is an action I created that changes the text of the button to say redirecting, and then redirects them to /, which is home. If there's an error, if there's an error, like a general error, I can set the general error action. If there's password must be reset, that's one use case, I can set an action for that. On waiting list. So there's all these different ways that I can customize it once it's in there. But the idea is you don't really have to, because the way this is set up, these errors just pop up a little box that says the error, and success just redirects you to the home page. So that's pretty much standard in most apps, but easy enough to change if you need to change it. And then, I mean, this is kind of like a wacky demo because some stuff didn't go well. It's not totally smooth. But there's one more element that I did want to touch on, which is for the magic link, password reset, user verification, different things require the user to click a link in their email to confirm it's them. So you can, in your Bildr projects, you have some settings where you can say that when someone signs up, you can immediately sign them up. You can add them to a wait list, or you can send them a verification email that they have to click before their account is real. And so depending on those, I'm going to send some emails. And so what I wanted to just quickly touch on, which is most of what's explained in this video and what these settings here are for, is that I can go into something like SendGrid, and there's a dynamic template section. So you can kind of like make, so let's do like a magic link. Well, actually, it won't send it because that user didn't work, but I can show it. So basically, like I had created a template that can be whatever I want in any email provider. In this case, I'm using SendGrid, and the demo text I have in there uses SendGrid because SendGrid's free for 100 sends. But basically, I can put anything in this email, and all that matters is there's a button here with a weird-looking link. So what I'm doing is, and what this explains, is I'm setting my email API credentials into these boxes. So what you would do if you don't know any of this and you just want to use SendGrid is you just come in here, copy that, come into here and paste it. There's like 3 sections you need to paste. But basically this is like, comes from SendGrid. So if you know APIs and you have a different email provider, you just use what, you look at their API, and if anyone needs help, I'm more than happy to write these for any other email provider. It's fairly straightforward. And then what you do is you have a dynamic, in SendGrid anyway, you have a dynamic template ID and an unsubscribe group ID, which I just get from SendGrid. So like this magic link one, here's my template ID. And then unsubscribe groups are something different. I grab the ID over there. That's also specific to SendGrid. So once that is set up, there's a little thing here. So this is the link I need for that button for a verify session email. This is the link I need for a verify account, and this is for reset password. So I'll just copy that, and then on the actual button that I showed, that's where I would paste. So I'd be on here. The URL for that button is here. So it's kind of a lot if you're just watching it, but it's actually super straightforward. It's like a bunch of copying and pasting. And I do this for every project I make. It takes about 5 minutes to have user verification, magic link, and password reset emails all set up. And then what happens is when they click that link, that weird looking link that we let you copy and paste, it takes them to one of these pages that's already made that comes with a pattern. And so like it'll use the token from that link, all done with Bildr, all server side, all secure. And then this page will just read that token, and if it's supposed to verify them, it'll verify them. If it's supposed to sign them in, it'll sign them in. If it's reset password, it'll verify the token, let you write your new password, but it won't let you switch the password unless that token is valid, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a way to add that next level of complexity and keep it flexible so you don't have to use SendGrid, or Bildr doesn't have its own built-in email sender. You can use whatever you want without being too crazy. And if you don't want to use magic links or verification, you import the pattern, you use sign in and sign up. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to set any settings. That's all built into Bildr. So I think, yeah, I mean, that demo honestly didn't go as smooth as I wanted. So please ask questions if some of that stuff didn't make sense. But that's pretty much it.
I will say, like, his video, the video that actually comes in with the pattern, like, that's all, it's literally like step by step how to connect all of it together. What was I going to say? Yeah, we have a lot of tutorials on the authentication. Did anyone have any questions? You guys can just add this pattern.
I think there was one from Lars that he just wrote, and then I was going to demo the one for Peter as well. Cool. So yeah, for Lars, there's several ways to do that. So what he's asking is, so an employee for a company signs up and logs into a dashboard, and then restrict it so only the employees can sign up, right? So that way it's only, I'm assuming that means only from the same domain name, right? So it would need to have some sort of conditional actions on it to allow for that or not. And I would do that in 2 places. I would do that during the sign up. I would check to make sure that it's actually a valid one, but then I would also do a verify an email. So don't do automatic sign up, like make it verify through the email. So that way they type that email address in and it has to be the correct one. And then I would also end up doing in the app additional conditional logic, which I'm going to go through conditional logic in just a minute, to check to verify that it is the appropriate one for that user. You can go even further and actually do server-side data restrictions. It's a little more in-depth, but you can do it. I have that in one of my projects called Cycles, where when you sign up, you actually add other employees to an organization. And when you do that, it creates a relationship record between that end user of your project and that record. And on the server side, the actual like data request in the server will not allow access to any entities or any records that user hasn't been specifically added to. And then it even has like child relationship record types. So like if you have other collections that are children of that parent one, it automatically cascades those restrictions. So you can do pretty much any data relationships you want and secure it however you'd like. Probably for what you're doing, I would use a combination of the front end stuff, the authentication, making sure that they have to verify with that email address, and then also do the server side to make sure it's completely secure. For the demos for each pattern, that's every pattern specific. So Drew made most of our patterns, and luckily he's fantastic at making videos. So most of those, yes, do have videos. Some of them just don't require it. Like there's one that's a tweet button, right? It's literally just a button with it for, for Twitter. So some of them don't require videos, but for anything that has this type of depth where you have a bunch of settings and a bunch of things you can choose, there should be videos in there.
Yeah,
and I didn't see, Cora, that you had already responded to that. My bad.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, with this authentication pattern, the cool thing about it is once you learn how to set it up one time, it's like it's applicable and very easy to set up for all the areas. And then you can change it at any point. Like some people with their apps might start up with having a wait list. So people sign up, they get added to a wait list, they get a, thanks for, signing up, you're on the wait list email. And then you would just repeat the same exact integration as far as like creating a template in your email provider. And then when you then setting that up in project settings authentication area, so that when you move someone off a wait list, it triggers them to get an email that gets a token that then authenticates them into your app. So it's actually a really, really complex, but a lot of that is handled by what Drew has built, like just the thinking about all the stuff that should happen. What if someone tries to sign in and they're not actually, they're like still on the wait list and they haven't been let off? Or like, what if they're signing in with the wrong password? You got to show them a message. Like all that stuff has been handled in Drew's authentication flow, and you can just like go in and edit the way that it looks, the colors, the text, etc. So yeah, and then there is a question here asking about Loriance was asking about if there's a Bildr training course or an educational how-to library. Drew, would you mind showing them how to get to the community where they can see that section on the left? So if you go down, into community and support, or just bildr.com community when you're signed in, there's a section on the left for education and documentation, where you've got access to our docs. The Bildr YouTube channel is where I upload a lot of tutorials. And then there is one Bildr course that we have right now that Dan Meehan created that y'all can go through. And then Drew created this awesome little Bildr video library where you can like search for other tutorials that we've done, or like Bildr hours that we've had where we might have like taught you guys how to do something cool, and we'll continue adding to that as well. And educational content is going to be something like that's really important for us to kind of figure out how to do. And so we're also going to be working on like a beginner series of videos and an expert series. Beginner series will kind of more, I think, be about showing you how to use Bildr, kind of like some of the basic things. And then the expert series will show you how to do some more complicated things, maybe like filtering, filter sets or something, I guess individual like feature things, right, Mark?
Yeah, so the beginner series that's being produced right now is basically it's 4 to 5 videos, start to finish to production for a basic app, like a very simple start from nothing, get all the way to production, click publish, and you're live, right? And the goal is that that's 20 minutes or less for all 4 or 5 videos. It might take you longer than 20 minutes to actually build it all, but it's like 20 minutes of videos. But the goal would be like 30, 40 minutes tops. You're actually in production with something. And then the expert series is feature specific that we're building out. So this is like, how and why would I use variables, right? What about complex filtering? What's the purpose of URL routes, and what are the different intricacies of them? Like you can do things like, for say you're making a blog post, you can do dynamic data in the URL route. So you can have like /post/ your post name or post ID, and it'll automatically bring the data for that post. So there's hundreds, literally hundreds of things like that inside of Bildr that need sort of one-off videos that we're in the middle of writing out and producing. So it's going to take us some time, but they're coming. For Dan Meehan's course, he is in the process of updating the pattern that goes along with that. There are some things in the course that he references that are not in the pattern. And so like when you're going through and building it, it's missing some things. So you might have to build some things manually while he finishes updating that course. Hopefully it'll be out in the next week or two though, his updated pattern. So that course, what it does is it says, okay, import this pattern and you get all the details. And then from there you build it out. And he needs to update that. So just so you guys get a heads up, if you go do that, you can do it right now, but some of it might have to build manually there.
I did create like a really long form video. It's like 40 minutes long, but it's super basic, and where you just create like a little list app that creates items, and that does have a pattern as well. So you can like follow along and build it, or you can just like import the pattern. There's a link in the YouTube video for that where you can just like deconstruct. Patterns are a great way to learn because you can reverse engineer them. Like you can see, especially if it's something like a landing page, you can see all the way that all of the styling that's been put on the elements, and then as well as like any actions that go along with it and how they're set up. So I think that will be really helpful. So let me see here. See you, Lou. It's really nice to meet y'all.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I know everybody has to bounce out pretty quick. But I want to show real quick the conditional logic, because we had a question about that earlier, and regarding states and like how to show and hide things conditionally, things like that. So that's something that almost every app has a need for. So I can do a quick show. There's as with almost anything in Bildr, there's a lot of ways to do things. Because it's similar to code, you can just kind of choose your own path in building whatever you want. What I'm actually showing here though, this is actually this will be released in the next couple of weeks. It's an updated environment. So it's going to look a little bit different than what you're seeing now in the studio, but it's pretty much the same. You have canvas, you've got styling and things like that. I wanted to come in here though, because this is a project that I'm building. Like I do side projects all the time. I always have like one or two side projects going, partially because I just enjoy building stuff, but also because it helps us test everything. I try to build a new project from scratch like every 3 to 4 weeks. So this is something called Founder Update. It's so that you can update investors and team members as you progress, or even like family members. Like on my list of people that I update, my wife's on that list. You know, so that way she gets the update whenever the update goes out. So I send these things out monthly, and I wanted to build a product for myself to do that with. So I have some things in here that do hide and show. So I wanted to show how I do that. So let's go take a look. Let's see, I've got a little page here. I think it's this one. So let me just zoom in here. Go to like 100. There we go.
PS. It might look a little bit different because this is we revised the UI. This is what you guys are going to see in the next
and
update.
It's not done. I'm not even finished with it yet. So there's going to be some more changes too. So like one thing you'll notice, you know, the element detail panel is over here on the right. I think this is probably going to end up being an option. So right now it slides in over the left side in your studio, and the action groups are over here floating on the right, you know. So this is changing, but I'm probably going to make this optional. Like you can choose which way you want to view the studio. If you like elements on the left and actions on the right, you can do it that way. Or if you like it this new way, you can keep it that way too. We'll do a lot of that kind of stuff where, you know, everybody has preferences for how they like to work, and we try to accommodate those. So this, if you look at this, it actually looks like a blank form here. Like there's nothing on it. But the reason it looks that way is because I have things hidden by default. So if I go look at, let's see, I don't remember which one is. Yeah, so like this here has a class that I've added to it called visibility hidden. So if I undo that, it'll show up, and you can see where this little row is used here, that row is used here, and that row is used here. So I have all these like nested grids and pages showing up everywhere. So this is one thing to note too. When you're building in Bildr, there are certain design paradigms and thoughts that once you get good at it, you'll get used to doing things component based. So for instance, in here, these little forms inside of each other, but also even things like menus, right? So when you click this button, I actually open this page into a container that's inside of that button, right? So that way, the nice thing about that is, rather than having this one page with like 1,000 actions on it, I have this page that's fairly simple. Then I have this page that opens. I have this page that opens inside of there as well. And it just keeps my list of actions on each page much simpler. When you come back to it 3 months later, or after you had people in it for 6 months and you need to go fix something you haven't really been in here building or changing things, just makes it so much easier to manage over time. So let me go back here. I'm going to put this back onto visibility hidden. So I have it by default, it's just hidden. What I have though is inside of one of these events, I'll just do one. So on mouse enter on this outer container, I'm just going to set it to, oh, actually, you know what I did? I think I did it here. Hang on, I went even fancier on this one. I did. Okay. So when you go into the parent row on mouse enter, I have this action. And what it does is actually runs an action on another page. So it actually runs an action on this page over here that's called show send button. So if I go over here and look at show send button, what that does is removes that visibility hidden style class. All right, so this is one way to hide and show things based on user interaction. So what's happening is the mouse enters this row, and when that occurs, it triggers an event that actually runs on this other page that shows that button. So you can do with the event triggering on basically anything that can happen in the browser. So click, scroll, mouse enter, blur, really like anything, drag and drop, anything you want to do, you can trigger any event, and those events can like branch out in your app and run things on other pages and all kinds of stuff. So with that pathway in mind, you can really build any flow you want. So that's one way to show hide things, like default things hidden. That would be another thing I would recommend too. You can do things like default this button to showing and then hide it on page load. You could do it that way. It makes it a little easier to see what it looks like in the studio. But the only problem with that is then the initial state when the user loads the page is going to be showing that button, and then you're going to hide it, So they're going to have like this little flash. So I typically like to show or set it up in here exactly how it's going to be, how I want the user's initial state to look like. Now, the other way you can do this is with classes. So in a style, I'll just go into this style. I don't know if I actually have in here though. Let me see if I have one. Let's see. This might already have one on. Yeah, so this actually has a hover state. So in the style editor, you have these two things at the top. One is device width, which in this next release, Dorian added the ability to create custom device widths. So you can make any width you want, which is really cool. I always need, and I know Drew does too, we always need one between here and here. It's like, this is like 700 pixels and this is like 1400 pixels. We always need 1,000 or something, So this will let you create whatever you want. And then below that are these states. So states are something that's in CSS. It's just built in to CSS. So what we're doing is literally just using what the browser already does. So when you choose hover state, what you're doing is adding properties to it that you want to be different when the user is hovering. So like in this case, I'm adding a 1 pixel border when they put their mouse into it. So if I click away here and I just put my mouse in, oh, well, you can't see it because the studio also does its own. I don't know if you can kind of see it there. Probably pretty hard to see, but it is adding a 1 pixel border into that. But you can do any property you want. So you want to change the background color or change the opacity or whatever you want to do, you can use these states for that. And you can add any state you want as well. So CSS gets really fancy. You can do, things like if the user's focused in the input, plus if they're doing these other things, also have a whole set of cascading states. Bildr supports all of that. So one way you can do show and hide is, on hover, do a thing that like hides it or makes it opaque or whatever it is. So that'd be another way to do that sort of thing. One other method there that I do a lot of is if you have something that is, like this button might actually have it. Let's see. So this here, yeah, so this here is actually set absolute positioned. This is the menu that's inside of that button. So when you click on this, I actually open this menu into this container that's inside the button, positioned inside of it 100% from the top and from the right. So it's going to start at this bottom right corner and come out like this. So that little menu is just going to show up right underneath here. Now I do that with styling, but one way you can do it on click, like I have with actions, but you can also just set this button state to have overflow hidden when you're not in it, when you don't have the mouse over it, and then overflow visible on hover, and it'll just automatically show that menu when the user puts their mouse into that button space. I wanted it clickable in this case, so I actually have an action, that runs on that. So if I go to the events of this, I actually have an action that opens the page, removes the style class from display none, so it shows it. And then I actually put a cover behind the whole thing that's the full width and height of the page. So you actually have to click on that cover to get out of the menu. But that's all user experience stuff. And the key thing to note here is there's probably 10 other ways. Like I bet Drew is sitting here watching and he's like, oh, I would have done that in a different way, And anyone else who's in the room who knows CSS or who has built apps and other things, there's like 100 ways to do this stuff. And that's kind of the key thing. Bildr just provides a place for you to, be creative, really. We don't try to dictate a method for almost anything. The only places we do that are things like security, data security, sign up, sign in. Those places we have some specific patterns and methods for doing it. But when it comes to UI and UX, it's just open to you however you want to build it. I know that was a lot. I don't know if there were other questions asked. I can't see the thing.
Hey,
We do
Mark,
have
there is
some
one
more.
you could probably address. Oh, God.
Cool.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Drew.
go ahead.
It's from Robert about how much do the actions and conditionals slow down the speed. And then he said for context and bubble, the workflow actions and conditions slow things down a lot. I think that'd be good to talk about.
Yeah, let me see. Hang on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. And I'm going to pull up the Bildr project because I want to show you the level of conditional that's in there. So just one sec. Hang on.
Yeah, the short answer is it doesn't slow it down. It's just like if you were coding. Because you would do the same thing with code. You'd add all these events. So
exactly. Yeah, you're gonna basically build any level of complexity you want, and because those flows, like our action group flows, what's actually happening there is it's executing the JavaScript that's inside the function. So whatever is behind it is just what's running in the browser. So the honest answer to the question is really, well, how efficient is the JavaScript that someone put into that action, right? So whatever that action is, it's going to be dependent on that. So like if you get someone else to write you a custom action and bring it in, the answer to your question becomes dependent on how efficient is that function, right? But all the things that come with your base toolkit are going to be super efficient and built for doing really big projects like the Bildr project, right? So like let me see if I can show this real quick. Might not be able to. I like to show this because it kind of answers the question of like breadth of possibility, right? And like what you can actually do in it. All right, let me show my screen. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this is literally Bildr and Bildr right here. So this is the studio where we build it. So just earlier today, I swapped, last night and this morning, I swapped those panels. So I made the panel show up on the right instead of on the left and was doing all that. And there's some conditional logic that has to happen to make that occur. So just so you can see kind of the details. So let me look at like page load. So you can see how many actions are in this page. First of all, this is the studio page. Like this is what is executing in there, right? So if I go, let's do page load and project step one. So this is like, you're coming into Builder Studio and there's a little please wait up there, right? Like when it comes in and it's got the like cover and it's waiting, I'm doing a whole bunch of things in there. One is I'm running a whole bunch of conditionals, like have you accepted the terms or not, all that kind of stuff. But I'm also pre-caching a bunch of stuff. I'm pre-caching data that I want you to have when you start in the studio. I'm pre-caching pages because there's like 500 pages in Builder, in the project Builder. And so I want to pre-cache a lot of things. So like I'm checking, is there a project name equals value in the request or not? And if there is, are you a collaborator? And if you are, then do all these things. Then I go cache a bunch of stuff. I mean, this will just keep going. Like here's the load. And then I run a custom function that has a concatenate to go run to Mixpanel and update it. I mean, it literally just like keep going, keep going, keep going. This opens the project. We do a bunch of caching. Is this Builder or not? I mean, like this will just literally keep going. Like I can just go for 5 minutes just on the series of steps that occurs. So what you put in here can slow it down. Like when I go cache all these pages for the element types, for instance, I'm caching a bunch of these little grid rows and stuff. And that does take time from the server. If you've never retrieved that to your local session before, it's going to take time to do that. But that's not because of like the limitation on actually doing a series of conditionals. It just has to do with what I'm actually doing when certain conditions are met, right? So if you go do API calls to 100 different places and you have waits between all of them, that's going to take however long it takes for all those API calls to occur, right? But the actual core is not going to slow any of that down. That won't be what keeps you from doing things.
And things like that are simple and normal, like adding and removing classes, hiding and showing things, like changing properties. It's not noticeable to a human how fast that happens. And it won't, you can add a lot of those without slowing it down. It's a different situation than Bubble, which not saying anything on them, but it's just a different way. It's the same as if you were attaching a bunch of JavaScript events in code and they ran in a browser. That's as fast as Builder is. You know, it's the same thing.
It's literally the same thing. Like we are literally binding those JavaScript functions to those elements. We run them through a queue to get the details, like your configured details, these options and things. But it's a very nominal queue compared to like we don't have a whole, it's not like an engine that's faking it or anything like that. It's just running it. And most of my projects, I don't have, like this project doesn't have a please wait on it. You know, my project for my founder update stuff. And this, by the way, I have running on mobile. I basically use this on mobile only now because I got it working on mobile earlier this week. I've got all the styling done for it. And it works fine on my phone, as fast on my phone as it does on the you know, the main browser on the computer. So yeah, totally up to you how efficient you get things. If you load, there's other things too, like on a grid, you have settings like in the properties for how many rows to display. If you leave that empty, it's going to load everything, right? If you say load me 10 of them, it'll get all the data and bring all the data to the page, but then only render 10 of them. And then you can say show more on scroll, and it'll just, when you hit the bottom, it'll load the next 10, load the next 10. So there's things like that is really, efficiency in Builder is primarily up to the creator. That's one of the reasons we wanted to build Builder in Builder, was to push those limits. Like I want to be ahead of whatever you are trying to build. What we're building with it should always be more complicated than what you're trying to build. So that way we're just ahead of whatever you're going to run into. I think we've achieved that for the most part. I'm hoping, I mean, actually, you guys hit edge cases for us all the time already. So I say that, but you know, small team can't ever hit anything, hit everything. I think we actually tell our customers, or we used to tell our customers, you don't really know what production is like until you've had 1,000 users in it for 100 days. Like that's, when you've got that, then you kind of hit most edge cases and you've solved for most of those problems.
I wanted to add one small thing to that, like more of an advanced setting, is threading with those action groups. Because if you do have a set of a lot of action groups, but some of those action groups are not dependent on the previous one, you do have multi-threading options. I don't know if you wanted to show that.
Yeah, you can actually set, here, I'll go back in there. Thank you, Dorian. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Because that does
so-
speed up a lot of things because it's not waiting on things.
On any action group, you can say run in a separate thread. And when that thing executes, it'll actually branch it out in the JavaScript and run it asynchronously with whatever else is executing. So that's even different than the wait, don't wait inside of here. So like if you have an action group that has a set of things inside, the waits will still happen in there, but those things are all just running concurrently with a set of other things that are running now. So yeah, it's pretty, and the JavaScript functions do the same thing too, by the way. So these actions, some of these actions are like a series of JavaScript functions that pass data to each other. And those also have waits and don't waits and can run concurrently. So it's really, really detailed in there. But by starting with this concept of everything as a plugin, that's what created this like, okay, well, we're starting at this root level of we have a function. That function needs to run. What does it need to run? And then how do we now make that something that a user doesn't have to think about what the JavaScript is? And that's what these actions are with the input arguments. And then you go that to the action group, and then that executes in the browser. Thank you, Dorian.
Do you run
Dorian
any
has.
calculations? I didn't see that. I mean, we see a lot of other things, but like,
Yeah.
has anyone done a basic, like a shopping cart where it's doing calculations, you know, price times quantity, adding tax rates in it, that pulling from the database based on different countries, states, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton layered into that, right? But just so you know, our bread and butter in the consulting practice is back-end ERP systems. So it's inventory, invoicing, it's all that. Like, and it's super complicated inventorying systems. Like we have a customer that has 140 retail locations with central inventory and inventory in each location, and they all sync and they all have to, it's all real-time calculated back and forth, and it's crazy. So you can do literally anything you want to do. The easiest calculations in Bildr, though, the simplest stuff, I'll share my screen one more time. I'm just going to add something here and then I'll delete it afterward. Hopefully I remember. I actually did this a couple weeks ago and then forgot to delete the thing. It was like, and I published it in cycles and it like broke the app. So yeah, somebody remind me afterward to go delete this. But let's go, I'll just put a set value action in here so we have something to do. And I'm going to put a math in here. So there's an argument type called math.
Yeah.
And this, you can literally just type an equation in of whatever you want, and you can reference values in other fields and things that are in variables, and your data exists in the variables locally. So if you're just wanting to do like simple calculations in the page, this is the easiest way to do it. Because you can get anything from that in the page, and it's like an Excel formula almost. This will get built out a lot over time. Like I want to make this really, really powerful, but it's good enough right now for probably 90% of apps. If you get into really complex calculations, it'll totally depend on what you're calculating, how you want to calculate it. Is it real time? Is it something you batch? Is it, but you can do anything you want in there, however you want to approach that. So yeah, that's typically the answer for us too, by the way, is like, yes. So tell me more about what you're wanting to do and we can guide you to the best answer for it.
Yeah. And then if you have any particular questions about like complex calculations, post them in the community. Dorian is like a pro at that. Like he's done so much of that. It breaks my brain to think about it. So yeah, if you ever need help setting up like that, I'm sure Dorian's game to help. And then how about we do maybe a couple more questions? Alex posted something asking about mobile native apps and like the way to attack that. And so if you want to talk about that a little bit, Mark, and then if anyone has maybe one last question or something we can cover. Feel free to ask.
So I'll show you a little bit of what I did, because I did 2 methods in this project, so it's probably a good use case to show what I was doing for mobile. It's fairly simple, and I actually used a JavaScript method in one part, and I used like the CSS method in the other part. So first of all, Bildr is a web app builder, right? So it's creating web apps at the end of the day. Now making those mobile responsive and work on mobile, it's going to by default work on mobile, but does it look good and feel good on mobile is a whole different question, right? So most of what you need to do for getting it to work on your phone or tablet is going to be in styling. It's going to be about when this thing is, when the page is this wide, it needs to be this thing, and when it's this wide, it needs to be another thing. So one way I'll show that is on my home page here. I have some things like, let me go, I think it's in this one. Let's see, styling, I think in here. Yeah, so I'm not sure why I said all three. Dorian, this is why I really needed those, the colors. So Dorian just added this week. It highlights the ones that you've actually set properties on. And this was just this week. And when I set this up, I didn't have it. I probably went into the wrong one and like set it at some point. But what you can see here is if we look at this flex direction, so this is saying this is a flex box and make it a row, a single row. So that means there's this container over here and there's this container here. So it's going to be this one and then this one. And then what I do is when I'm on a phone, switch it to be column. Okay, so what that does, if I go here, at some point in my breakpoint, I'm just going to make this smaller and smaller. Oh, sorry. In my dev environment, I've got some issues. Let me pop this out. Sorry about that. All right. So if you can see how it switches here. So I'm just switching it from being basically one horizontal row to being a vertical column of things at that breakpoint. So that concept is like half of making things responsive or more. That might be like 80% of it. That's a really large chunk of it. Just reorganizing things based on the width of the device that you're on is a huge chunk of it. There's also another way to do it on this page inside of the page load. So if I look at the page load action, there's a condition in here somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's on this. It's when you select this, open entry, condition mobile. Okay, so here I did something different. I wanted to actually, like, when the user clicks it, if they're on mobile, do one thing. If they're not, do another thing. Now, on mobile, you can do in a lot of different ways. You can actually check a thing in the system that's called the, what is it? This is a device type. I can't remember what it's called. I don't ever use it, that's why. But you can do that. The user agent, right? The user agent, you can actually check that. And there's like specific user agents for iOS, for Android, for, for a regular device or for a computer. You can check that. What I did is I said, you know what, I want to, if in the system, so there's an argument type called system, if the width of the window is less than or equal to 768, do this thing. Otherwise, don't do anything. So basically on normal screens, it doesn't do anything special, which means that in this case, when I click this, it's going to open the detail into this right panel. But if I'm on mobile, I also want to do a little more. I want to run an action on the app page called mobile show main panel. And that is this one, mobile show main panel. And I hide the left panel and I show the right panel. And then there's a close button that does the opposite that runs this. So basically I'm like flipping that. And honestly, this I could have done in CSS too. Like I didn't need to do this in JavaScript, but sometimes I do it in JavaScript. A lot of this has to do with like when I come back to this later, I don't want it to be hidden for me, like why something is doing something. So sometimes I'll use a function or an action to do it instead of CSS. Drew, do you have any other recommendations for mobile?
Well, I would say that's all good for responsive. I wouldn't add much. I mean, it's pretty much how you do it in code. Like you need to understand the CSS and then implement it. But for native, like actual native, since Bildr doesn't export into native, one option would be to use a wrapper, which I know people have done with bubbles. So I know it's possible, but from my experience with wrappers, you can't get them approved in the Apple App Store if it just wraps the website. So I'm not really sure, but there are ways to get around it too. Like in the past for clients, I've wrapped a website but did like a native login screen only, and then that passes through the App Store. So there's ways you can get it through. But the other way is progressive web app, which is kind of like in my life where I would probably go. You know, I don't really have like an app for no code, let's say, but if I did, I'd probably do progressive web app. What you do there is you have a manifest.json file, it's called. You'd have to like look this up because there's like some stuff you put in there. But in Bildr, you can upload that into your project, and then you can reference it in a page header. And what that'll do is that'll like set an icon. So people, if they select save to home screen, it'll set an icon so they can come right back to it. And then you can do other things, like you can set offline stuff. I mean, you kind of have to know this stuff when you get into PWA in Bildr. There's not as much interface around it as everything else, but you can do all the things you need to do so that progressive web app functions like a web app.
And one other thing I would add to that too is if you want to do push notifications, you have to do a wrapper, right? So like the PWA is not going to allow push notifications. And now,
although even in that case, there's services where you can call to an API for your web app and it'll send a push notification. Right. So there are workarounds there too, but it's almost like this is an outside of Bildr question. This is like an all web app question. It's like how do you get it into a native app? And so there's different little quirks and different little things you need to do, but you can pretty much get it done.
And to be clear there, if you got two users viewing the web app, they're going to get notifications from each other while they're viewing it inside the web app, right? So like if you have, there's actually a thing in Bildr called data listeners. And I almost always set up data listeners on every page for data, because if I'm looking at it and Drew's looking at it and Dorian's looking at it and I add a record, it'll just show up everywhere for everybody, right? So that'll happen. But for push notifications where it actually like pings the phone while the phone's off, right? While it's on the lock screen, that's a different thing. And Apple requires their SDKs to be used for that to occur. You can do some stuff on Android without it because they open it a little more to the browser, but Apple does not at all. So I think even the workaround that Drew was talking about, there's actually like an app that the user would install, and then and from within there they like register that they're connecting to your app for those notifications, and then the push, that's how it does the push. We do eventually want to solve this, like in Cycles, another project I built for our team here to use as project management. I wanted to replace Slack, and I got it decently close there, and I probably could have kept going with it, but I can't get push notifications to work without all this workaround. And so without push notifications, a straight up communication tool, that's not going to work. You know, if your literal project is a communication tool, that's the scenario where I'm like, okay, I think you need to be native mobile for that, because you can't do push notifications. Outside of that, everything else I've ever built, I don't need push notifications, and it doesn't require native mobile because of that.
It was a valiant effort to try to rebuild Slack. So
it looked like Slack. I like to push things though. I had everything. I had like emojis working and like reactions and uploads.
Every time a task was assigned to us, we'd get like a chat, you know,
it would ping in the channel and everything. And then I pulled all of it. That's something else like you got to get used to doing. It sounds like most of the people who are still on the call have built things in the past, but like we're very used to, we build it and then we're like, trash that, rebuild it, you know? and that's just part of the practice of building stuff. I mean, I think it's part of the fun, but
yeah.
Well, Bildr an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes. So, Charlotta, I hope that answered your question.
I can elaborate in 2 seconds on that PWA versus hybrid. Like, it really depends on your app and like your style. I like PDA because I'm like a web nerd. Like I'm a coder nerd. So I'm like, oh, PDAs is the future. You know what I mean? It's kind of goofy. Most people would probably prefer to just wrap it in a native mobile app because then you can download it in the app stores and stuff like that. So it really depends on like your goals and what your app is.
Yeah. Yeah. And because Bildr is just sitting on JavaScript, when you wrap it, all you're really doing is saying, make this JavaScript can talk, depending on the wrapper, you can make that JavaScript talk to the SDK on on the native device directly. We actually did that. Dorian, you remember building we made an app for, what was I can't remember the name of the diabetes app. Yeah. And it was actually an app that would talk to, a diabetes monitor and go back. So it had to be an actual app, but it was running our web app inside of it. So we have done it before, and it's definitely a doable thing. But Bildr's really, it's not intended for native mobile yet. At some point I want to get there, but not yet.
Cool. All right. So I think we're probably in a good spot to go ahead and wrap. So I will upload this recording into the community, and then I'll go through later and tag some timestamps if you want to jump to specific areas. If you guys have any feature requests or questions, etc., you can chat us in the community. And then there's a little option in there to create a support ticket. So if you want to talk to us just directly and not post it publicly, just create a support ticket and you can ask a question, and then we'll get to you on that. And then real quick before we go, Mark, do you want to chat about, we might have some friends who are not in the US right now that might be seeing some issues with speed. Do you just want to tell them what we're working on for the next update?
Yeah, so we got a bunch of reports as we started letting users in that there were latency issues. It's primarily over in the UK or over in Europe and in Asia. But I do think it might be happening depending on where you're at, what just a lot going on the back end. But basically what's happening is like the first time that someone loads a page in the studio, so like the very first time they ask to look at styling, for instance, right? It would take 10 to 20 seconds is some of these reports where it's like a really long time, and it would happen like every page, right? So serious, significant latency issues. So we've been working on it for the last few weeks, trying to figure out what's going on. I think we've solved it. We haven't released this solution yet, but Dorian and I were actually on a call with 3 of our dev team members this morning for hours going through that solution, and it's looking really good. So we're right at the cusp of it. I'm excited to get that release out because it's not just for that, it actually just makes everything faster. So it's really good. We want to get to where when you build a static website, just like a normal website, I want that to be as efficient as if you built it using a static site generator. Like we'll eventually get there. Bildr is totally dynamic though, right? So it's literally dynamically creating everything, rendering it in the client. So probably technically you could never get as fast as static, but I have some thoughts. I think we can do it. We're actually generating a lot more static now as you build and then delivering the static content. So that'll just make it better and better and better. So efficiency for us it's not something that you ever solve, right? That's not a problem to solve. It's just an ongoing effort that'll just keep happening. So, but yeah, for our European friends and our friends over in Asia, if you experience it, what you can do is that it should only be like the first time you go into each area. So if you go to an element detail and then you go back to an element detail, same element or a different element, you should not see that latency a second time. We have had some spikes and things too, so that you might see something different than that. And that's just growing pains of letting lots of users in when we haven't before. But if it's a consistent thing where you're like, if you're seeing anything consistent, like reach out to us. We want to know about it. We want to trace it. We want to find it. That's why we're letting everybody in now. So that's the place we're at. So yeah, yes. Thanks everybody for being along with us.
Awesome. Thank you guys for making this a really great session, and bringing me awesome questions. Have a wonderful weekend. And then if you guys have anything else, let us know.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye. 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 Bye.